Chapter 28. After Wymore, we continued south, leaving Nebraska and finding ourselves on the far side of Kansas, still miles from Salina. Despite the Beaumont pleas to go straight to Salina Hope Hospital, Lester was fixed tight to his plans for one last detour. So we ate Pop-Tarts and chips and candy bars from the Mega Mart and watched the landscape roll by outside the bus, trying not to think about Papa lying broken in the hospital, trying not to imagine the worst. We were just north of Manhattan when a siren wailed and lights flashed behind us. All of us kids tensed like watch springs, coiling down into our seats, keeping low as Lester pulled the bus to the side of the highway with the rest of the Sunday traffic. It was with more than a touch of relief that we watched a white and blue police car fly past us on its way to someplace else and realized it wasn't alert missing alert after us. But Lil and Lester hardly noticed a thing, so absorbed they were with each other. Not long after, as Lester followed a long curve in the highway, Fish got to his feet and moved toward the front of the bus, stopping just shy of the yellow line painted on the floor. He was peering ahead of him up the highway, and his knuckles were white where he clutched the back of Lester's seat. I got up from my place next to Will, squeezing past him to move toward Fish. Something was up, sure as sure. "What's going on, Fish?" I asked him over the noise of the bus. The others were looking our way now, curious. "I smell water," said Fish, "and lots of it." I cast a quick glance next to us as Lil, who was looking our way inquiringly. Lester turned his head as well. "You've got a good nose," he said to Fish. "We're not too far from Tuttle Creek Lake." "That's a fair-sized body of water, that is." I put my hand on Fish's shoulder. "You're doing fine now, Fish," I reminded him quietly. "There's no need to worry, right? You've got things under control. You've got it scumbled." Fish gave one quick, hard nod with each thing I said, as though he was punctuating my sentences with his chin. "You're good," I said to him. "You told me so yourself back by the pool at the motel, remember? It's just a bunch of water." Another nod. "I'm good," he finally agreed, and his hand relaxed its grip on Lester's seat. I knew that, despite Fish's newfound confidence, the memories of his full-blown 13th birthday hurricane would haunt him for a long, long time. It was the sort of thing no one could ever really forget. "We're almost there," said Lester. "Carlene lives just up ahead. As soon as I pay her what I owe her, we can head over to Salina. It won't be too long until you're all back with your families." "Carlene? Not Carlene," I yammered before I could stop myself. Startled, Lester swerved the bus into oncoming traffic, barely missing a honking pickup truck as he turned to look at me funny. "What do you know about Carlene, young miss?" asked Lester, surprised. "I don't believe I've ever mentioned her name." "It's Carlene's cousin Larry that owns the Hartfield Bible Supply Company. She helped me get my job." "It's just, isn't Carlene tattooed on your arm?" I said quickly, trying to cover up my blunder. I jabbed Fish in the ribs with my elbow. My brother's eyes went wide as he realized that I'd been hearing things about Lester that no one else had, and he tried to help. "That's right, you've got tattoos on both arms, don't you?" "Well, I did that a long time ago," Lester mumbled, trying to unroll and button his shirt sleeves over his tattoos as he drove. His right shoulder began to jerk up and down like he was trying to keep a persistent bird or bee from landing on his shoulder. Lil looked away from him, studying her shoes. "What's Lester still doing with all these rotten kids?" Rhonda's voice came spilling back into my head like vinegar. "He's got no brains, that's the problem," Carlene's voice stirred in. I was disappointed to hear those ladies. For a while, Lester's mind had been too full of Lil to let those voices in. I hated to see him bid them back. "Lester the dunderhead, Lester the dimwit, Lester the dumbbell, Lester the—" "Stop it," I cried, and everybody looked at me. I realized I had my hands over my ears, and except for the noise of the bus, everything else was quiet. "Why do you listen to them, Lester? Carlene abandoned your dog on the side of the road because it chewed up her best red shoes." I couldn't stand it anymore. Lester hit the brakes hard, steering the bus once again to the side of the road and coming to a sudden lurching stop. He didn't look at me, and he didn't move. Instead, he just sat there, staring out the front window, letting the bus engine idle. "She's a bad one, that Carlene," I said, then pressed my lips together tight, knowing I'd already said too much. "Mibs, honey," said Lil softly, "maybe you and Fish should go sit back down." "Nah, Lil," said Lester, his jaw quivering with anger or sorrow or both. "The girl's right. I don't know how or why she knows it, but she's right." He sniffed once and wiped his nose on his sleeves. "I always knew that Carlene got rid of my dog and lied about it. She got me this here job after all." He traced the steering wheel in front of him with one finger. She got me this bus." "Lester the crybaby, Lester the softy, Lester the—" "Go sit back down, Mibs," Lil repeated gently. Fish took me by the arm and steered me into a seat. Bobby popped a gum bubble and raised her eyebrows my way, saying nothing but looking keen to my distress. Will sat on the edge of his seat, holding on to the bench in front of him as though ready to jump to my aid. Lester let the bus idle at the side of the road for several minutes. I did everything I could to ignore Rhonda and Carlene's raging abuse of Lester. I felt sick over his willingness to allow that kind of talk in his own head, and I vowed that I would never let Ashley Bing or Emma Flint or anybody else like them have that kind of power over me. I wouldn't let the voices of bullies or meanies or people who barely hardly knew me work their way into my brain and stick. Eventually, Lester turned to Lil like a beaten-down man asking for mercy. I just need to settle up with her, Lil. I just need to pay Carlene what I owe her from the Bibles, and then I'm done. Then I'm yours, if you'll have me, that is. Lil's smile was so big that her whole large self seemed small in comparison. Of course, Lester, she replied, and Lester's face transformed. He looked like a man who had finally found his own personal guardian angel. Then I am a happy man, the voice filled my head, and the voice was Lester's very own.